Fostering connection through vulnerability, the People Pleaser podcast validates struggles, celebrates growth, and inspires positive change. Together, let's embrace authenticity, challenge patterns, and evolve with compassion. Hello and welcome, everyone. It's Corie, your host. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad to be here. I just feel like I have so much to say. I'm in a super chatty mood. And so we're just going to get into it. And I actually have a people-pleasing example from this week to share. And it's a bit of a doozy. Not my finest work. So I went for a wax. And as I shared on my professional appointments episode, I do get waxed monthly and I go to the same place. And the reality is that I used to work at this place. So that is often a bit of a bonding opportunity for me and the tech. And it's also just it's a way of relating in. I do feel like I maybe have some ulterior motives going on where I'm kind of like, I used to work here. I know how to do this. If I'm being like totally transparent. So I wanted to get in on like a specific day and in a specific time frame. So they give you the option on their website to just like choose any tech. You can also be specific, but I was like, you know what? I just need to get in. I don't care who does it. So I get there and I end up waiting for about 15 minutes. So she's running about 15 minutes late and she finally comes out of the room. She's in with another client and she comes up to me and she's super apologetic and just, explained that she just had to clean her room and then she'd be ready for me. This girl is lovely, like such a sweet girl, very chatty, very personable. And, I immediately wanted to give her some grace. And sometimes we're just late. Like I know in that job too, like depending on who you're waxing and like what the situation is, you can go over time like really easily. So I was trying to really approach things with like a really open mind. I wasn't really rushing, so I could be patient. She gets me in the room and she begins my wax, and I'm very used to how this is supposed to feel. And it's not supposed to feel good. It hurts. It hurts. And I am feeling like she's putting wax on and pulling the strips off, and it's not hurting, which tells me that she's not getting the hair out. And not to get too technical, but if you pull the strip the wrong way, like you want to be pulling against the way the hair grows. So you're pulling, in the opposite direction that it's growing. But if you pull it in the same way it's growing, the strip just comes off and the hair stays. So I knew that's what was going on. And so they teach you to like use broad strokes with the wax to try to get as much surface area off as possible. And she was in there making like these tiny little strips and like she was like really getting in there. Like bless her heart. But I am realizing that like my knees are like out to the side. Like I am in like a swan position. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is in yoga. My hips are like getting weak. And I'm like, I've now been holding this pose for far too long. This is only supposed to take 20 minutes tops. I look over at the clock and we're now in like the 30, 40, 50 minute zone. And, the whole time we're chatting and she is working hard. Like I can tell she's working hard. She's not like distracted. She's not, she's staying on course, but she's just not doing it right. And so I know like that tells me that she's probably pretty new. And so then she asks, if she can go in with the tweezers. And that is common. You know, if there's a few strays, you don't want to overwax an area. She is not just tweezing a few strays. That is all I'll say. She's down there with the tweezers for far too long. It's way beyond what's comfortable. And I'm just like, oh my God, she's tweezing me instead of waxing me at this point. And so she finally wraps it up, and I'm like, I don't even want to know like what things look like down there, because there's no way that that was a complete wax. And we're on to the armpits. And now I'm like getting kind of impatient. And now I am actually running behind, and I do have somewhere to be. So I'm telling her, listen, you can do these with one strip. I know it. I've done it myself. You just put the wax on, one strip, boom. And now I'm trying to like make her like kind of go quicker. And anyways, we finish up. I've been in that room for an hour, plus the time that I waited. And I come out, and the receptionist and the tech are like, so we've given your underarms, they're on the house because, you know, I was late. And I'm like, you know, that is a nice gesture. However, when she had left the room and I did take a look, there was so much unwaxed area that I knew that I would have to go home and like deal with it. And so their policy is like, if we missed something, just press this button and we'll come back in. I didn't want her to come back in. I didn't feel that would have helped the situation. And so anyways, they dock the underarms. I pay for the Brazilian, and I end up leaving her a very generous tip, because at this point I'm feeling bad for her. I know she was trying. It's not that she didn't work her ass off for the last hour. Like, she was working. And so that later that night I come home, tell my husband, and he's like, why didn't you say anything? And like, true, like this girl, well, she probably, for starters, she probably knew that she didn't do a very good job. So she knows. And if I were to put myself in her shoes, she's already beating herself up about it. I didn't have to make it worse. However, I realized like I shouldn't have had to pay for it, or, you know, like it should have been discounted. I don't know. Like, these are situations that I'm so uncomfortable with, and it leads me to feeling like I'm being entitled. I'm being too much. I'm being bossy. I'm being bitchy. Like all of these really mean names, where really, like, if I were to take the humanity out of it and just look at like, I'm paying for a service, the service wasn't complete, then that justifies a discount, a freebie, whatever. So when my husband asked me that, I literally was like, what would I have said? Like, I truly am not equipped for those conversations. And, now that I'm talking it out and I'm like away from the situation, I'm like, I could have just been like, I'm unsatisfied with the wax. It feels incomplete. I've already spent, an hour of my time here. I don't have time for her to fix it. Blah, blah, blah. So anyways, it was rough. I felt for her. I was feeling like frustrated and, like that my own needs weren't being met. It was just like a whole mess of a situation. So not my finest work this week. I'd like to say that I've learned something from the experience, but have I? We'll see. We'll see next time. So that's the people pleasing. What is some good stuff? There's been actually some really good stuff going on this week. I've had, I think, 3 people in my life this week come up to me and tell me that they've been listening to my podcast, like in the flesh, like face to face, human to human. And that is just so special to me. And that just feels so good. And it's an opportunity for me to like, just really hear like what it is that you're liking, or like, like when you're listening to it. And I really like to be able to be a part of that experience. And so I always welcome feedback, whether it's through leaving a review, but I'm I'm just so grateful that people feel comfortable enough to be like, hey, I'm listening to your podcast and I like it and this is what I'm taking away from it. So thank you so much for those of you who are listening and giving me feedback. Like, it's been so incredibly valuable to get your perspective on things and, what resonates and how it's landing. And I know that I'm always sharing my own experiences and my own examples, but I'm doing that as hopefully like in effort to build a bridge, in effort to humanize these experiences, normalize these experiences, and hopefully it I don't know if hopefully is the right word because, I hope that we're all not struggling in the same way, but I think we are in a lot of ways struggling in the same way. And to just know for me that, hey, Corie, you're not like a total weirdo, just like airing your dirty laundry out on, the internet, but that it's also like resonating and landing. And, obviously you're going to have different examples, but like maybe it's similar behaviors and patterns. So that's really cool. I'm just so grateful. And so today I really have a topic that I'm excited to talk about. I don't really know what to call it. The feeling I've been having lately is that I have really pulled away from genuine, authentic connections. And I mean that in the full scale. I have noticed that I am deeply, deeply craving meaningful, cathartic connections. And there's quite a bit to work through in this. So, first of all, I live alone and my husband lives in another country. And so I know that has been a challenging part of I don't get to come home to my husband. And there is that piece that's missing in that I wish we lived not only in the same country, but in the same home. And so I also know that I'm kind of saving a lot of space for my eventual move. And I've had a really difficult time knowing if I should plant roots, and if I do plant roots, how deep I should plant the roots. So I do truly feel like I'm in a bit of a transitionary phase, and I don't know how long that transition is. And so it's been this wild ride of do I invest in this or do I wait? And I've noticed that that's playing into where I'm putting my time and energy. And, I'm not going to join a running group because I might move, or I'm not going to join a pottery class because I might move. I do feel like I'm holding back on fully immersing myself into things that might not line up with my timeline. So that's a very specific part of this, but it is context. So I was talking to my therapist about this, and I actually got really emotional, and I basically told her I miss my friends. I miss the experience of friendship. I miss that group of people that you just know is always there and you can go to and you talk to throughout the day, and they're just your people. What she said to me really did leave an impact on me. She said, a snack is not a meal. And at first I didn't really know what she was talking about, but she said, a snack is not a meal, and you are seeking nourishment. What she meant by this is that a lot of the way I am showing up in connections right now isn't on a deep level. I'm keeping things very surfaced, and not that I'm just into small talk or, it's not that I'm not spending time with people, but mentally I am kind of half in, half out. And so my move and like my upcoming transition and just the like unknown of it. Like, I don't even know how to talk about it with people in the sense that it's like, I have no answers. I don't know when I'm moving. I don't know all the steps. Like I'm truly just like riding this wave, and it's a huge part of my life, but it also has like very little conversational quality to it. Like, it's not something that I really even want to talk about because there's really not that much to share. So this huge part of my life is just kind of deduced to like, I'm just waiting and I don't really know and I have no answers. So that plays into like the life in general that I'm leading for myself. And so when she's saying a snack is not a meal, she is saying that like the snack is just this like surface level, light-hearted, like, or even like infrequent, like maybe, you know, I only see a friend once a month, or, you know, I have friends that live out of the province or out of the country. And so, you know, we're really relying on texting and FaceTime. And even with my husband, like 90% of our relationship is on FaceTime. So still, that's like snack level. And for some people that is meal quality, like that, you know, that could fulfill that need for connection, but it's not fulfilling it for me. And so she is telling me that that a snack is not a meal and that I'm craving or that I'm needing nourishment. And so I had to think about that because I have amazing people in my life. I have wonderful friends. I have so many different people that I could turn to and make plans with. One thing is that I'm not really doing that. And that has a little bit to do, or a lot to do, with just like my perception of my capacity and my bandwidth, and just feeling like I am so busy, like on a day-to-day basis, that I'm so reluctant to like over-plan my downtime. And I've had a conversation with my therapist before about this, and she's trying to help me see the distinction between like commitments that drain my energy and commitments that actually give me energy. And stay with me here. I'm on a bit of a whew. So when I'm in these like snack size connections, those are actually draining my energy. But when I'm like having a meal, that is giving me energy. But what I am noticing is that I'm not giving myself or my friends the opportunity to have a meal together. And that is because of the people pleasing that I'm doing in these connections. It's the way I am showing up in these connections. I am actually not giving myself fully to these experiences of being in connection with people, with my loved ones, with my friends, with my family. And what I am doing is I'm showing up to these connections and I'm caretaking. I'm managing. I'm taking care of everybody. I'm asking, how are you? And, you know, really wanting to go into depth with like asking questions and being curious and like talking about my friends and my family. Like, I want to hear from you. And I'm not sharing me. I'm so focused on leading the conversation or facilitating the conversation. I'm doing everything in my power to ensure that that person feels heard, that I'm up to speed on their life. And when the questions get turned around to me, I bat them away. I will either give kind of like a quick Cliff Notes version of my update, or I will just minimize it. I will minimize my experience. I will omit information. I will omit certain updates. So if I feel like, oh, this isn't important and this is trivial and, oh, this is just such a small little thing, like there's no point, I won't even say it. I won't even let them know that about me. And I do this with my husband. We have a call at the end of every day and we kind of, run through our day. There are so many things that I just don't share. And they're just like little things. Like, I'm not like not telling him the main, like the essence of my day. But honestly, like I'm beginning to realize that like those little things, those like funny little moments, those quirks, those things I observed in the day, those moments I had with my clients, how I felt in my workout, all these things, like these things that make me and have created my day, I'm leaving out. And I think a part of it comes from this like feeling of not wanting to take up too much space and not wanting to like bore someone or like think like, oh, they won't care about this. Or this isn't important. This is important to me, but it's probably not important to anybody else. And what I'm noticing is that in omitting those, I'm like shrinking myself. I'm like basically compacting my day into this like easy to deliver, but like totally lacking like essence and meaning. And so then what happens is I go into these connections. I am, spending time with people that I love, I care about. I'm like facilitating these conversations where I'm like, it's like a Q&A session and that I'm leading. I'm then downplaying, my experiences. I'm downplaying like my stories. I'm minimizing my shares. And then I leave feeling like my needs went unmet. And so what I'm wondering and what I'm beginning to think about is that I'm potentially like on an unconscious level, not feeling fulfilled. And so then I'm not prioritizing these social connections, because if I was leaving these social connections feeling like on the top, on top of the world, deeply connected, like I had a good like session where we were connecting on an emotional level and we were just like vibing, I would want more of that. I would want more and more. But if I'm leaving feeling like I just hosted a Q&A session and I just gave these like sad little updates of my own life, I don't leave that feeling fulfilled. And that's not anyone's fault but my own. I am like ensuring that I am not taking up space. I'm ensuring that like everyone's needs are being met except mine. And so I think that, like by leaving these experiences not feeling fulfilled, not feeling like I really got what I was looking for, there's that unconscious like reprioritizing where I'm like, well, if that's the feeling I'm going to leave with, then I don't really want to prioritize that. I'd rather just spend the day on my own at home. And that's what became so sad. Oh, I'm like getting emotional just thinking about it. Like the amount of time I spend alone and I don't want to. Like I truly I am an extrovert. Like I'm a social creature. I really thrive and I'm like my best self when I'm in connection. And I'm like pulling myself away, like shrinking myself, minimizing myself, like trying to tell myself, no, you're an introvert. Like I've been calling myself a freaking introvert. I am not an introvert. And my friend gave me such a wake-up call this week. She gave me such a like beautiful nudge I had shared that on Instagram that I'd found like so much joy in dancing around my apartment building. And I shared this in my stories, and she messaged me in response to that and said, "Do you ever forget that you're a Leo?" And like, for those of you that don't know, like the zodiac and horoscopes, like Leos are bold, confident, they're leaders, they're courageous, they're very like in your face, like king of the jungle type vibe. And I truly do identify as a Leo. Like I truly do, but like I have shrunk myself. Like I have truly shrunken myself, and I'm truly seeing like how people pleasing and trying to be like kind of just malleable, like just sort of fitting myself in wherever you'll take me, like trying to take up no space at all, has really started to like have some impacts, like some behaviors are being created out of this. And the biggest behavior that I'm noticing is this like pulling away and pulling back and being alone and thinking that I'm like most comfortable when I'm alone. And that is a lie that I've been feeding myself. That is a total lie. Like, do I love a lazy night on the couch every once in a while? Yes. Do I want to do that every night? No, I do not. Does my social battery get drained? Yes. Like I need to be aware of like what my capacity is. But last night I attended a friend's masterclass. That was like a community feeling where I was like, okay, there's like new people here. I'm in community. I'm in conversation. The night before I went to a letter writing session for like in support of Palestine, and I'm sitting in a room full of women, and we are all like passionate, and we're sharing like our emotional experiences with the genocide in Palestine and like what our role is. On Sunday, I went to Haven, which is these saunas here in Victoria, with my girlfriend Corie, and we ran into Fiona and her girlfriend Amanda, and it's just like I'm loving all of these moments of connection and community, and I'm just like, why am I holding myself back from these things? These are literally the things that fuel me, that energize me, that give me creative ideas, that motivate me, that just like totally are all such positive influences on me. And I was texting with a friend today, and we were just sort of having this conversation, or a similar conversation to this. And she raised the point like, well, capitalism, like capitalism plays such a role in this sort of hamster wheel that we are caught up in. And it really does impede on our ability to have bandwidth, to have energy, time, finances, to have these social opportunities and to prioritize these social opportunities. I am, like so fully aware that like my life is run by my work schedule. And that is so like, okay, that's not a moment of like awakening. That's, the case for so many people, but emotionally and like energetically, I do have some power and sway over that. Like there are ways. And it's just hard when you have all of us who are stuck in these hamster wheels and, they're not really compatible. Like a friend of mine and I, we were trying to make plans, and like this was in May, and we were like looking at like near the end of June. And it's like, really? Like, how did we get here? Like, how did we lose such touch with the importance of these social connections? And my therapist today was also sharing about how she herself has been longing for like the freedom that we had as a kid, and not even like time, like not even just like freedom of time, but like the freedom of like being uninhibited, like dancing, she used as an example, or like talking on the phone with like your best friend for like 2 hours and just like, what did we talk about? Probably boys, but like we talked every day on the phone for like hours and hours. And, like kids just playing, like using their imagination, being involved in things. Like it's so interesting how like we just grow up and obviously our priorities change, but like I don't want my priority for like social connection and meaningful connection to be on the chopping block, especially if it's for like mundane shit. And there's also a way of like bringing each other into our worlds a little bit more. And I'm totally guilty of like having a bit of tunnel vision. Like I'm very like single task oriented. And this comes from I'm a real stickler for undivided attention. I learned like with my dad that whenever we would talk on the phone and I was like busy doing something, he would be like, you know what, why don't you just call me back when you have some time? And I really actually learned to appreciate that, because I think we are in this like world of multitasking and just like kind of we've lost the art of this like single task and just like focus and just like really being present. And so this is something that I bring up with my husband a lot, because he's a busybody and he's, moving and on the go. And he has no problem calling me from absolutely any type of environment. Whereas I really do focus on like, no, I'm going to call you when I'm like sitting down, I'm at home, I'm not distracted. It's just you and me. And we see that differently. And both of us have had to make some compromises here and there. But I do still kind of see that as like within my connections. Like I really do value this like undivided attention. And when I can't have that, and when it feels a bit disjointed, I know that I have a tendency to check out a little bit. So that's work I need to do. But it's also about like acknowledging that maybe that's how I show up, and how do I work with that. So obviously there's a lot of context here, and I feel like I've been just like running a mile a minute, but I'm beginning to really know this about myself. And this is something that I think it's been really important for me to get back to myself. It does feel like I'm coming back to myself. I've been, masking and shrinking myself and pulling away. And I now am seeing the long-term effects of this, and it doesn't feel good. So I want to do something about that. And so I am curious if this is something that may feel familiar to you. I know a lot of people, like more and more people seem to be identifying as introverts. And I feel like as a society, our collective capacity has really lessened. And there's just so much stimulus in the world that is like grabbing our attention and our energy in every single direction. So I do feel like there's this collective, like, I can't do as much as I used to do. And I think there's some real like wisdom in that. Like, we're sort of saying goodbye to that hustle culture, that boss babe mentality. And we're like, you know what, we can actually just chill. But I would hate to see that at a sacrifice for like your needs for connection, no longer being met. And so for me, I know that if I'm spending too much time alone, I'm out of alignment. That isn't what feels true to me. Some of it, yes, but I am trying to be more mindful of keeping the scales a little bit more even. And one last thing that my therapist said to me today that I think was really important is, I was saying like, oh yeah. She's like, well, why don't you just call a friend? And I'm like, well, I don't really want to be a bother. And like, I don't really know what their schedule is. And I feel like I have to plan everything. And I was just like coming up with all kinds of rationale for like why I couldn't just pick up the phone. And she said, is it possible you're overthinking it? Yes, it is. It is definitely possible that I'm overthinking it. And that goes for most of my thinking is overthinking. So yeah, I want to leave you with that. Just the idea that, I'm at least one person telling you that I really value connection. And so if you're holding back in some way in your life, like I would trust that, this is information and it's really worthwhile getting clear on like, why am I holding back? Why am I not reaching out? Why do I feel socially isolated? Why am I feeling lonely? Like, I know I have friends. And maybe it is a matter of like putting your feelers out a little bit and making the first move towards connection. And maybe it's about finding new connections, through a hobby or some sort of interest. Maybe there's committees at work, that, we're already going to work. Like maybe there's opportunity to find more meaning and connection in a place that you're already showing up. I know that this is sometimes feels trivial, and I know that it's not just as easy as like signing up for a club like it used to be when we were kids, but there are intentional communities everywhere, even online. And that has been something that I've not taken for granted in this podcasting community and with my Instagram. Like I do truly feel like I'm making new friends, which is so cool. And it's rooted in like me just showing up authentically and them being like, hey, I like what you're throwing down. Let's just be authentic together. And so I'm happy to put that out there as well. Like just show up the way that it feels best. Whatever feels good, like that's information worth recognizing and paying attention to. So I think that really does wrap up what I wanted to say. I feel like I got a lot off my chest and I'm just feeling a little bit lighter and looser. I am recording this on a new software program. So if we made it this far, we know that it worked. All right. Thank you so much for being here. I'll talk to you soon. Once again, this is Corie with the People Pleaser Podcast. Thank you so much for your support. And if you did like what you heard, please consider leaving a 5-star rating and a review on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can find daily content from me on both Instagram and TikTok. Both handles are at peoplepleaser.pod. That's at peoplepleaser, all one word, .pod. Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you on the next episode.